What happens when you're the one helping everyone else find clarity and direction in their lives, but you're so burned out that you don't have it in you to keep going? That's the kind of funk we're talking about today. And the way out of that funk may be simpler than you think. Welcome to the WTF podcast, friends. My name is Molly Smith, and I'm on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, but more importantly, how to pivot out of it. By tuning in today, you've joined me on this mission, and I am so glad you are here with us. My guest today found himself in a season marked by burnout, divorce, and a whole lot of life happening at once. That tension led Joey to a moment where something had to change. And the shift that followed was surprisingly simple, yet incredibly powerful. He took that experience and turned it into a simple, values-based approach of helping people move forward. His story is such a powerful example of how the funk you're in can be setting you up for the work that you are meant to do. So if you are in a season of burnout, you're going to want to turn up the volume on this one because this conversation might be exactly what you need. Please join me in welcoming Joey Chandler to the WTF podcast. Hey, Joey.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a good intro.
Oh,
I got chills. I'm like, yes. And you're right.
yeah,
Let's
it is your
go.
story. It's what
Yes.
you did.
It's crazy. It is 100% true. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is amazing. I will say you're absolutely right. Like sometimes if you can learn from the funk that you're going through,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
you gotta learn from it. But if you can learn from it,
Yeah.
chances are you're not alone.
That's right. That's right. Okay. I want you to take us back to this season where you were in burnout, you were going through a divorce. Take us back to when you were really in the pit of the funk and help our listeners understand what your day-to-day looked like.
Yeah, so this was I woke up in early January of 2022 and I burnt out. That was like my day. So the months, and it was pretty funny. I really remember that day and the time after it,
Yeah.
but I don't remember so much like what led up to it, like the specifics. What I knew is that I was going through divorce, or I had just signed divorce papers. It was post-COVID. I was living alone for the first time in 20 years. My business was struggling. Like there just was like this was George Floyd. Like there just was a lot
Oh,
going on
in the world. Yeah. Yeah.
and I just couldn't see myself straight. And it was really frustrating because I was a coach. I was helping people with purpose and values. I was like doing the stuff,
Yeah.
and uh, and I was putting on a good face. And I'm pretty certain if you had asked me the day before, how you doing, I would have said I'm fine. Life sucks, but I'm fine. And unfortunately, I'm a little stubborn, and the universe just said, "You know what? You're not listening to any of the things that we're giving you, so we're just gonna burn you out and take
Yeah.
everything away so that you have nothing except to deal with whatever you gotta deal with." And that's what happened on that day in January. I woke up, and I just was like and when you hit that moment, it's a weird thing to describe. You can't describe you don't ever believe that you're gonna get there because you don't
Mm.
realize how, like, empty you feel.
And far gone
And how far
you
gone,
are.
yeah, and,
Yeah.
like, you're just
Yeah.
like I thought I was tired, but this is just a different level of tired, and I woke up and I'm like, "I'm done, I got nothing left," and what came to me was, I can't be anything but myself, it just takes too much work.
Oh, okay.
That was the sentence, and then I don't remember what happened, but, like, then 2 days later, I do remember this, is I woke up and I said, "Okay, if I can only be me, then who am I and how can I be more of that?"
Okay, so let me ask you a question because it feels like that was really kind of a come to Jesus moment where you were trying to be everything else to everyone and you're like, I'm out. So how did that show up in your life? Being everything else, everything to everybody else.
Oh, I could coach people on values. I could coach people till I was blue in the face on all sorts
Mm,
of different things. At that time in my life, I gave a lot of advice. I'll just say that. I gave a
okay.
lot of advice, and I didn't apply what I was probably speaking to myself.
Hmm.
And, um, and so it was a lot of chaos, a lot of, I would ultimately it was saying denial. I go, "Yeah, everything's fine," but
Yeah.
not really just saying, "Wait a minute, there's something really bad here." And a sense of like hopelessness.
Yes.
Put on a good face, but
Yes.
really, that it's not gonna work out. I'll tell you that I'll do that, but I won't do it in the end.
So you
One
were
thing
coaching others, but you weren't necessarily walking what you coached
that
at
was
the
one
time.
yeah. Yeah. And I put on a good face. I might look good. It's one
Oh,
of those
yeah.
things, I did the work. I did the work to look good, but
Sure.
your body knows things sometimes.
Absolutely. Okay, so what did you do next? Like, what was the first step that you took after those first couple of days?
So the first so after I said, "Okay, who am I and how can I be more of that?" 2 weeks later, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he told me the story about the Navy SEALs and how they put everything in sets of 3. And they do that because it's easier to remember 3 things than more when you're getting shot
Sure.
at, is the basic reason.
Fair.
And I'll be honest, I don't even know if that story is 100% true. It makes sense to me,
Go with
but
it.
it made sense to me in that moment, and I just was like, I don't know if I can cuss, but it was like, "F it, I'll just do 3 values." And
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
just there was no, like, transformation, no, like, real deep, like,
Yeah.
introspection. It was just like, "Three's easier. Let me get it down." It ended up being, connection, curiosity, and fun. Those were the 3.
3
And
values. 3
j
values that you were
just
gonna embody.
3 values,
Okay.
and the amazing part was almost immediately, definitely within a couple of days, I could wake up and say, "Okay, how can I bring a little connection, curiosity, and fun to my day?" And that became how I recovered, asking that question over and over again. Because I'd start off connection, curiosity, and fun. Fun was getting out of bed, getting a glass of water, going to the bathroom, and getting back into bed. That
Okay.
was fun. That was
At that
all I
point, yes.
at that point, and that was all I could do.
Yeah.
And the part that became really interesting is, and I didn't know this at the time. This was I literally was just trying to do anything to have a little, maybe read a book, maybe listen to a like do anything to have a little curiosity to
Yeah.
call people or anything. But ultimately, what I was doing is I was asking myself, how can I use my values? And I was kind of celebrating. I'm like, hey, that's cool. I did something good. It reminded me that I had something to offer the world, even
Mhm.
though I, you know, I didn't know how to do it. But I'm like, I think that if the world had more connection, curiosity, and fun, I think that would be a good thing.
Good
That
start.
I didn't know how to make use of that at the
Mhm.
time, but it just gave me a little sense of like that little bit of that foundation.
Yeah.
And when you're burnt, like, it doesn't take much to give you give you some hope because but it's hard. And so it was basically like day after day, how can I bring a little connection, curiosity, and fun? Baby step, a little bigger step, back to baby steps, back and forth.
Yeah.
And sometime in, I think it was around April. I can't remember that. I don't remember exactly, but I woke up and I
Sure.
was like, I'm not burnt out. And it was shocking. Like I was literally shocked because I hadn't done meditation or yoga or
Okay.
journaling or any of the stuff that traditional anti-burnout stuff, or at least what I associate with
Sure.
anti-burnout routines. I hadn't done it. All I had done is worked on being more of myself.
Okay,
And
so
so
that was so literally every day you ask yourself, "How can I do one of these 3 things?" Not all 3, just one of these 3 things during the day. When you did it, you called that a win.
call that a win.
That was
Absolutely.
it. So
Yep.
you were very intentional living on purpose around these 3 values for just a small portion of your day.
Eh, You you might call it intentionality. I call it surviving. But there
But you
was
asked yourself the
but I asked
question.
that. Yes, I did.
That's
I
the
did.
intention.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I'll say this
yeah,
to my credit, me waking up and saying, "Who am I and how can I be more of that?" That was a life-changing question. And
yeah,
then me asking those values, how can I use them each day? And then doing something and then also paying attention. That's the curiosity part. Like,
yeah.
hey, what is this doing to me? Like, I feel better. The thing that I
Okay.
didn't know at the time was that when you take actions that align with your values, it triggers intrinsic motivation. So
Yeah,
you get a sense of like energy, you get a boost in confidence, you get a boost in like I can do itness.
yeah.
And so that bubbled up. So all of that together, again, not because I knew it, I just started doing it because I think this is working and I don't know anything else to do. Because I've read all the books. I've read books on burnout. I know what to do. None of that helped me before I burnt out.
Yeah,
And plus, when you're burned, you don't have the energy to read something and then like, "Okay, I'm now gonna go do these
it's not
5
there.
steps." I
Yeah.
so that's how it was. And I think, to this day, I was like, being anything other than yourself is exhausting and will lead you to burnout at some point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I know I certainly can, where you were I know for me, I was living out of alignment with in my corporate work with my skill set. So what my job was requiring of me and what my skill set was were misaligned. And so it was exhausting to get up and work every day knowing that I wasn't using my skill set and that my livelihood was dependent on me operating incongruently, right? And that
Yep.
led to an identity crisis. I mean, and so I think a lot of people can identify with when you aren't acting in alignment with your values every day, that the erosion of who you are, it's subtle until you wake up in January 2022 and you're like, "Who in the hell am I?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it robs you of the ability to celebrate. I just saying that
Yes.
because I'm sure you were very good at your job. Like you did things that were worthy of celebration or
Sure.
acknowledgement. But
Sure.
because you knew that there was this offness, this misalignment, you
Yes.
probably were not like, damn, I did a really good job. You're more like, I shouldn't be doing this anyway. Like and this is the part I learned. When I went, I got up, went to the bathroom, got back into bed. I'm like, boom, high five, yay me. Like
Yeah.
it gave me a sense of, and that
Yeah.
sense of acknowledgement is so important these days.
Yes.
I think maybe ever, but because we don't acknowledge ourselves, we may acknowledge other people, but
Right.
in retrospect, looking back at all that led up to burnout, I was acknowledging other people, but not myself, like
Right.
in a deep, like high five, like awesome job sort of way.
Right.
And when you're misaligned, it's just you're not going to cheer
That's
yourself on.
well, that's the lens through which you are seeing your life.
Yeah.
So I think what's also interesting is that, and this is a phenomenal takeaway for me, is that these little wins, these little actions that you were taking in alignment with your values, those compound. Those wins compound over time. So you started this in January, but by April you woke up and it's like, okay, I feel like me. I don't feel burnt out anymore because I am living each day in alignment with my values.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't even like I felt like me, I was a whole new me, because
Oh, I
I
love
was
that.
living true to my values at a level that
Okay.
I had never done before. I
Yeah.
was crystal clear in my values, I knew the actions to take, and I had this process or this habit of saying, "Hey, what do my values say to do?"
Yeah.
And as I did that more, what ended up happening, I started asking myself that in more situations than just laying in bed. When I was talking to someone, when I was,
Mhm.
I was going through divorce, and we're
Yeah.
working out, just my ex and I have a really good relationship, but it's we were
Still
divorced
hard.
for a reason, and so
Sure. Sure.
working and like you say, how can I bring a little connection, curiosity, and fun to that relationship? That that gave me ideas, and so I started to see
Mm.
how I could apply that process not just as to surviving my day, but also operating at a better level of myself.
Yeah. Okay. Why do you think something so simple worked?
Because it doesn't take any energy. When you get your core values down to 3, and
Yep.
this was the part, I had 5 core values. The other ones were like contribution and creativity, like other good, solid 5 core values.
Sure.
But the difference between 3 and 5, especially when you're burnt out, is enough to have you not use them
Oh, okay.
on a regular basis. Me
Sure.
waking up every day, how can I bring more connection, curiosity, and fun? Develop the habit. And if I had to remember 5 every day, I wouldn't develop that habit because it would have taken too much work, especially when I was burnt out.
Gosh. Okay.
So then I started developing that habit, and what ends up happening is you get that, like I said, you get that that boost of energy, that boost of accomplishment, that boost of like, I have something to offer the world, and I did it today with my ex, or I did it today with that client, or I did
Yes.
it today, and it gives you a sense that you have something to offer the world and you did it. Not just it, we all know we have something to offer the world,
Yeah.
but to be able to say, today I did something
Forwards it. Yes.
for that
Yeah.
is it just gives you a little boost of energy. And and again, all this is in retrospect. None of this was like, in the
Real
moment.
time. Oh, I absolutely get it.
You know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It reduces decision fatigue.
Sure.
I have an ex. I could go off and read 1,000 different books on how to co-parent and,
Absolutely.
or all of which is really good information.
Yeah.
Or I can say, how can I bring a little connection, curiosity, and fun to that relationship?
Right.
And it would give me an idea or, several ideas. I can choose one, go do it. And then
Okay.
that's just way less work.
Well, and I'll tell you something. So something just popped into my brain. Like when you have the 3, like your reticular activating system is going to be looking for the 3. I don't know if are you familiar with the RAS? It's like the filter in the brain, right? So it's that theory when you see it, like you buy a red car and then all of a sudden you see the red car on the road. It's
Right.
like your brain is filtering for connection, curiosity, and fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
makes it easier. I love that. Okay, I want to ask you if somebody is listening and they're like, I don't really know what my values are. How do I figure out what my values are? What's that process?
Yeah. So this was, there's a few things I've done well, and this is one of them.
Okay,
Um,
great.
do you mind? I'll just ask the questions of people, and I'll
Please.
just put
Yeah,
it there, and you could go. Well, let me just say this. Can I ask you?
absolutely. Please do.
Okay. So perfect.
Yeah.
So when you interact with people, how do you want them to feel?
Oh my goodness. Seen and heard,
Perfect. Seen and heard. Anything else?
cared for.
Care for. Okay, perfect. You want them to be seen, heard, and cared for. Awesome.
Yes.
Now, when you experience that yourself, you feel
Yes.
seen, feel heard, and you feel cared for.
Yes.
How would you describe that feeling in the word of like
Mm,
love or joy or happiness? Like, what is that word, like that feeling for you when you experience
mm.
those?
Oh gosh. For me, that's content.
Okay. Now, our core, that who we are has been with us for a long time. So
Mhm.
content is kind of what I call an adultified word. It sounds
Okay.
good. It sounds good.
Okay.
Like when you were younger, like when you really feel
Mm.
content, what is that? Is that joy? Is that happiness? Is excitement? What is that for you? Or freedom? What like it's somewhere in that realm?
Yeah, so probably is the closest analog there is probably joy.
Yeah.
Probably
I
joy.
we've talked whatever it is,
Yeah.
less than an hour, and
Yeah.
not shocking at all. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing every single one of your listeners, like, yeah, Molly brings joy to her life. Like you want people to experience joy, you want to experience
Absolutely.
joy. And there's
Yes.
places where you're good at it, and there's places where you struggle.
Absolutely.
Right. Perfect. Now, joy is a great big broad word. It means
Yes, it
different things to
is.
different people. So we
Yes.
want to pick 3 words that reflect what joy means to you.
Okay.
So what would be 3 words for you?
3 words that reflect joy. So am I looking for, like, nouns? Verbs? What am I looking for here?
I'm gonna just from your background, I'm gonna
Yes,
say
help me.
creativity. Creativity might be one.
Creativity, impact,
Okay.
being relatable or humorous?
Okay. Is that like connection or community or
Yes.
contribution?
Yes, that's definitely community
Okay.
for sure.
So let's
Yeah.
just say this: creativity, community, and impact.
Creativity, community, and impact. Yeah. Love it.
Does that does that
Yeah.
align with you?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You
there you
do you do this podcast, right? It's a creative experience to build community
definitely.
and
Yes.
build and to create impact.
100%.
Right,
That's
right.
it.
And your coaching, same thing. You help people get creative so they can connect with the people around them and make an impact.
Yes, absolutely.
So we can say those are your values.
Okay. Well, that process is pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
did you have this process when you chose those 3?
I had that
Yeah.
process already down. And
Okay.
at the time I chose 5.
Okay, and then you
Yeah.
slimmed it down to 3.
Yes.
I agree, 3 is much simpler.
Yeah.
That's much simpler.
Now, the one thing I just want to put out to all the listeners, one of the words I require that you use what I call a spark word. Creativity, curiosity, fun, play, adventure, a word like that.
Yeah.
And we do that because there's a couple reasons. One, that we have a tendency to adultify our core values. We want to make
Sure.
them serious and sound like, like this is, I'm here to make an impact. Not that impact is bad, but like, like
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to be authentic and real and all that stuff. And all those are good, except that our values have been with us since we were young. So at some point, fun, play, creativity, curiosity was a part of your life. It may not be
Absolutely.
much of a part of life now,
Now.
but at some point it was there. And I did this because when I started working with people, I these would be like friends that we do this process and they'd be like, I'm authentic, I'm real, and I don't know, I'm family or something, something all great. But their
Yeah.
faces wouldn't move. And these were people that I had gone skiing with, I had drinks with, like I had
People you
done
knew.
stuff with. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know that adventure or creativity is a part of your life. And to a T, they would all say what 2 things would happen. One, there'd be like this huge, they'd be like, yes, like this huge, just like you did with creativity.
Yeah.
They're like, of
Absolutely.
course. Well, duh.
Yeah.
And then they would say, I didn't know that I could use that as a value because
I would agree.
every single workshop they'd ever been to at a corporate workshop, it's all intellectual. Choose 10 words, then choose 5, then choose
And then
whatever.
slim it down. Yeah.
You slim it down.
Done it.
Now, yeah. And so I developed that without knowing this, but it turns out there's a researcher named Barbara Fredrickson, and she's out of the positive psychology world.
Love it.
She basically did research where she saw that words like fun, play, creativity, they broaden your awareness.
Okay.
So, because what used to happen is when we used to get chased by lions and tigers, we needed our awareness to get narrower and focused so that we
Right.
could run away. We didn't need to know the backstory of the lion when they were chasing us. We didn't need to know that. We just needed to get out of there. But
Yeah.
in modern life, when you have to go do a sales presentation or you're having a difficult conversation with a spouse or you are at a job interview, what has to happen is you want to widen your perspective so that
Right.
you have more awareness, so that you're more grounded, you're more creative.
Yeah.
And so that's why, from the personal experience as well as the science, that's why I say you always have to have a spark word.
Love it. Love it. Okay. How did this evolve from something that helped you into something that you now use with your clients?
Um, so after I burnt out, I started sharing this. I kind of went a little crazy. I was like, "Core values this and core values that." I
Yeah.
was that guy. I was,
Okay.
and but interesting enough, I realized that I wasn't getting the impact. Like I was starting to feel
Hmm.
myself not create the impact that I wanted. Like there was something missing.
Okay.
And I looked at all the core value work. Core values have been talked about in corporate culture for forever, and the research shows that they don't do any good, essentially. And even though people put a ton of really good, smart, passionate people put really good work into it, there's just something missing.
Hmm.
And what I realize is there's a difference between who you are and how you operate.
Oh, yeah.
You are your values, but you need
Yeah.
a system to apply your values every day because that doesn't happen naturally. The world is not
Right.
set up to ask you about your values and pull.
No, it's not.
It's not. Hence why we burn
Okay.
out. So you need a system. My system originally was what are my values and what do they say to do today? That was, and this is why I look back. It wasn't so much the values that made the difference. It was me asking every day,
The
how can I
question.
use them?
Yeah.
So that question became, I was like, that's it. And then I basically developed developed a system, and it's now become 6 questions. And can I walk you through the
Please.
questions? Yeah.
Yes. Please do.
So I call this the refinement engine because it's
Okay.
designed to help you basically refine out your fears and operate more from your values.
Okay. Let's do
Our
it.
fears are always louder than our values.
Yes, they are.
So we want to let them go so that we can operate from our values. So the first thing you do is you say, hey, what can you celebrate about yesterday? Now,
Okay.
I'll just ask you since we're here, what is something you can celebrate about yesterday?
Oh, had phenomenal time with my family.
Awesome. Great time with your family.
Yeah.
Second question is, what did you learn from that?
That's a good question. What did I learn? That I like hanging out with my family.
That I like hanging with the family. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I apologize for putting you on the spot like this.
No. Oh my God. I love it. Bring it.
So,
Come on. Come on.
what is a pressing goal that you're working with? You're working on right now.
Oh my gosh. I'm writing a new keynote right now.
Writing new keynote. Perfect. Perfect. Now, that's the third question. What's the pressing goal? Fourth question is, what's the fear or the doubt or the worry that comes up when you think of that keynote?
Oh, good heavens. That I won't be able to present it well.
Okay. Yeah. I won't be able to present it well. And is
You're
there
totally
any,
honest.
no, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Is there any other more like honesty, like I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, anything like that? None of which are true, but that's what's in your head.
Yeah, so I think so I actually have worked through a lot of that. For me, it's can I tell the story tied to the framework that I'm teaching in a compelling way? Like that, like my questioning my ability to actually do that.
Okay. Can I do this?
Can I do this?
Can
Yeah.
I do you have a vision. You're like, can I do it?
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And probably there's some thoughts like I probably can't, like underneath it all, or there's some worry.
Yeah.
We just acknowledge it. Okay, perfect. Now, what do your values say to do? Creativity, community, and impact. What are
Yes.
some ideas that those values would say to do regarding your keynote?
Right.
If you
Okay.
brought a sense of impact or you brought a sense of
Mhm.
creativity or a sense of community to creating your keynote, what might you do? This is the brainstorming ideas. Like, what could you
Mm.
do?
Well, work on each section, talking out each section,
Okay.
which is my next step. That's exactly what I'm doing. Have the
Okay.
first draft, but I need to go back through and kind of work through, does it flow well? And
Okay.
actually, I do this. This is part of how I write my talks. I actually speak it into a mirror so I can get the flow and the rhythm of it. So that's what I'm doing next.
Okay.
So
That's
that's under
awesome.
creativity. Yeah.
Yes, and then if you wanted to make a greater impact with this keynote, what could you do? Like, to not saying you have to, but what could you do?
I could I could record it into a podcast episode, which I probably will.
There you go. There you go.
I
So,
probably will.
okay, and then of all these ideas, that's the fifth question. And then the last question is like, what's one idea that you could do of those ideas? What's something you could do today?
Yeah. I'm gonna work on each section.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So the idea here is that each one of these questions actually sets you up for success. And the reason you have to do this, unfortunately, is that our world and our brains and our bodies are not set up to operate from our values. They're set up to operate from fears and doubts
Yes.
because that keeps us safe.
Yes.
If you
Absolutely.
wanted to avoid embarrassment, you would never do a keynote.
I would never.
You never would do it.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
what you're trying to create, the impact that you're trying to create, the sense of
Yes.
creativity and the impact of community that you're trying to create demands that
Yes.
you do this. When
Yes.
you celebrate yourself first, it triggers dopamine in the brain. It kind of gives you like an energy boost, just like it revs
Yes.
up the car a little bit.
Yes.
Asking what did you learn from that gives you a sense of accomplishment because you learned
Yep.
something, and opens up your mind to a growth mindset.
Love it.
Then what is your goal? That gives you direction and focus. And then as soon as you set any goal, and it doesn't matter if it can be big or small, but especially something meaningful, some fear or doubt or worry is going to
It's
come
gonna
up.
pop.
It's going to pop
Yeah.
up. This is not therapy. We're not doing deep dives. We're just acknowledging whatever that is on the top of our heads. You acknowledge, one, two, or three of those. And
Yep.
then you say, what do my values say to do? You brainstorm some ideas. You already have a good plan so that it wasn't a huge jump. But like if there's a
Yeah.
place where you were really stuck, it would open up new ideas.
Yeah.
And then from that list of ideas, you choose an action. And then
And
you
go
go
do
do
it.
it. And
That's pretty
that's
okay. So that's great. So
yeah.
when you implemented this framework, did you start seeing people adopt the values-based approach and asking themselves that question every day and in a more meaningful way?
Yeah. I had a guy who was an electrical contractor,
Yeah.
and one of his values was contribution. And
Okay.
he came to me. He's like, "Look, I'm." He was, I think he was like 58 years old. He's like, "Look, I want to sell my business in 10 or 12 years, and I want to retire. To do that, I need to make more money, and to do that, I need to raise my prices." And this was the guy's, second or third career. He had done all the workshops. He knew to raise his prices. It wasn't a question of like knowledge. But
Right.
he's like, I'm afraid that if I do that, like all the existing clients are going to laugh at me and leave me alone. So we went to work. We identified his values. They were family, contribution, and fun. And we were doing this work. And this was honestly, early on in my understanding of this process. But
Sure.
it took a little bit longer than it would now. But at one point, we were on the phone and I heard him slam his hand. He's like, boom, he slammed his hand on the desk. He's like, Joey, I got it. I'm like, what? And he said, I can't contribute to my family, to my business, even to my clients if I don't charge more. I'm so stressed. I'm so worried. I just can't be my very best because I feel like I'm kind of nickel and dime at the end. I'm not getting paid what I need. He's like, I have to charge more out of contribution. And so he went and he charged more. And then to have more fun with the process, I don't know if you've ever brought a contractor into your house to,
Mhm.
electrical contractor. One
Yeah.
of the big challenges is, and it's one spouse will get the bid,
Yeah.
and they will sort of understand why it's so expensive, and then the other spouse would be like, "What the you were getting," because they weren't in like, "These guys
Right.
taking advantage of you. Go do your job." Like, what are like that's my experience. Maybe you have different ones, but like that's a pretty common one. So what he did was he started doing videos. He would walk around whatever the job was. He'd say, okay, here, I'm looking at the kitchen. We're going to have to do this, this, and this. Here's this. This is going to cost about this much. And so he would describe it along with, the proper bid. it saved him time because he wouldn't have to try to remember what he saw at the job,
Right.
and then you could send the video to the husband or the wife, who would then share it with the husband or the wife, and they could have a conversation. What
Huh.
it does is it gave him more time to spend time with his family
Oh, yeah. Because no
because
back and forth with
no
all the
back and
different
forth,
people
and
and justifying the price and all of that.
yeah, and the exhaustion and the emails and the this and
Yeah.
that and all that kind of stuff, and he added $150,000 to his business in about 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it really came and like this, I don't know, I'd like to think I'm a good coach. I never could have coached him through that. Like, out of contribution, you should raise your prices. Like, I never would have thought that, but because he was engaged in that process himself,
Yes.
he came up with an answer, a solution that
Yeah.
worked for him. It triggered his intrinsic motivation. He was more creative, came up with a video idea. Like, it just, it snowballed because it came from
Yeah.
him, not because I had or myself or anybody had an idea. It came from him.
But you're starting the conversation and you're getting into the values and asking the question. And as a coach, that's really all you can do.
That's
The
all you can do,
person you're
right.
working with has gotta take
Yeah,
the ball and run with it, right? So that is such a cool story.
yeah,
Okay, tell me now, what would you say to somebody who feels like this sounds too simple to work?
yeah.
What would you tell them?
Yeah, so the 3rd component of the coaching program is so we have your values, we have what I call the refinement engine, and then we use what I call a 3D printed life approach. And this is do you know what a 3D printed house
I
is?
do. I
Y
do.
so you can see that nozzle goes around and lays the cement
Yes.
wall by wall. So
Yes.
traditional coaching generally says focus on one area of your life.
Mhm.
Focus on your business, focus on your fitness, do that one at a time.
Sure.
The problem is that we live in a world, it's called, people call it a polycrisis, where you're dealing with business, relationship, politics, social media, family, kids, you
Yeah.
know, pick up TikTok and you get all 10 of those, in 30 seconds, right?
Correct. Yes.
And our brains are just like, and what ends up happening is you develop this sense of hopelessness and a sense of
Mm.
like, I can't do anything about it. And I saw that and I was like, wait a minute. Because on my calls, we would oftentimes go from business to relationship to family to working out using the same process, but we would bounce around. It was never any one thing.
Sure.
And I realized I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is like a 3D printed house. Instead of trying to build one wall at a time, we build all four. So what happens is people pick four important areas of their life.
Okay.
So mine are business, romance, fun, and fitness.
Okay.
And the goal is every day to take at least one action that aligns with your values that serves
In
those
each of
goals
those.
all the way
Wow.
around. And it's in
Okay.
the refinement engine that not is that's the nozzle that goes around
Sure.
that makes sure that the materials of your house, which are your core values, come out smooth and they don't get
Okay, interesting.
full of rocks and doubts and fears and all that kind of stuff. So for the person that's like, no way this works, you're 100% right. It doesn't work in isolation. It
Mm.
works when you apply this every day. I didn't recover from burnout because I figured out my values and asked them one time. I did it over and over
Over and
again,
over. Mm.
but there were small layers. And I got to tell you, there's this amazing experience when you wake up every day or you go to bed and you're like, I can move my whole life forward. Maybe it's not where I want it to be right now, but I can move my whole life forward each and every day. And you get this sense of like,
That's
maybe say a few cuss words. You're like, heck yeah, I
knock
can
yourself
do it.
out, that's fine.
You know?
But yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so for that person, and then the other part that's really cool, the person's like, I don't think I can do that. Well, that's simply a fear or
Mhm.
doubt.
A
So
story.
what we do is what
Yeah,
can you celebrate? What did you learn? What's the goal? I want to have a program that really works. I want to
yeah,
have a coach that I can really trust. Okay. What's the
right.
fear? There's so many I've done in the past. It hasn't worked out. I paid so much money. I don't have the time. Okay, awesome. Then what do your values say to do? I have like the contractor guy. This took me a little while to understand. I'm the coach that you hire if you don't know what coach to hire.
Okay.
Because what happens is when after you work with me, you get more grounded, more confident, and you have more conviction about what works for you. So
Sure.
then you can go out and find a coach. After the contractor left me, he went and got a coach who knew the electrical contracting business. I
Right.
didn't know that business. So there's, systems and policies and all that kind of stuff. That's not my world. But the contractor doesn't hire that guy if he doesn't do the work with me so he's clear and confident on himself.
That's exactly right. I love that.
And
Okay, tell me, if somebody is listening right now who feels stuck, burnt out, disconnected, what is one question they can ask themselves today to start shifting?
yeah, what are my core values? And you can go back and redo do the thing, or just we all kind of know, like, it's not our core values. They're not that complicated.
Okay.
What are my core values, and how can I use them today?
Love it.
No.
Wow. Joey, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I am absolutely going to be asking myself those 5 questions every day, and I'm going to write up those 3 values up on my whiteboard so that I see them every single day. So this
Awesome.
is so simple and applicable. So, hey, listen, everybody, if you know somebody who's stuck in burnout, who's living in the funk right now, please forward this episode to them. This is so simple that you can apply it immediately and start to pivot out of the funk and into a life of purpose and joy. We'll see you next time.